We're asking everybody to get their flag, because this evening when we have the International Town Hall meeting, there will be media from around the world there. C-SPAN and all kind of folks are going to be there. And we want the world to see that we are a mighty and proud ethnic people, and that they can talk that post-racial nonsense all they want. We live a distinctly different, very different reality. And I don't know about you, I never bought it. I was annoyed by it and I thought it was stupid. What's kind of at stake here and what we're going to be really focusing on. The theme, of course, of the conference is racial healing and collaboration for Black empowerment. This specific session, Culture and Education for Black Survival and Development, we're going to discuss the Afrocentric, African-centric framework as the foundation for Black African identity and the preservation and development of the Black family, the Black institutions, communities, and nation. Models and strategies for controlling the education of Black youth, students, and children, and the creative use of Black art and culture, including hip hop, as a liberating force are among the many issues that we will discuss. Just to give a little note, introductory note of clarity, African-centered education, defined as a system of sequentially planned educational opportunities for learners of African descent that is based on philosophies and theories centered in the African perception of reality, and delivered through a curriculum that develops the necessary skills to participate as global citizens and advocates for the African descendant community. The purpose of African-centered education is to develop self-consciousness, self-determination, positive self-concept, a sense of Africa as it applies to the upliftment of the community, and an understanding of Africa as it applies to personal growth and development. As you see, that's a mighty mission, an all-inclusive mission, and what could be more valuable than doing all that we can do to support ourselves, our children, our families, and our communities. Now, we gather in the context of an election. I know that's news to you all, that we had an election and some orange cats now going to supposedly be in charge. And he got some ideas. I started looking at some of these ideas are kind of upsetting, to say the least. He claims he's a tremendous believer in education. And whatever we discuss here as far as the independent side of the ledger, and I think that's where many of us want to be, for the near future, the majority of our young people are going to be in that public system. So for better or worse, we're going to have to deal with it. So he's saying education has to be at the local level. But he quickly says that he would consider cutting the education department quickly, deeply, maybe eradicating it. We're talking about $15 billion in Title I funds. And as I know, having been previously a school board member, that those children serve, many of them our children, at-risk children, low-income children from low-income families. That would be a tremendous blow if that money were to disappear in those services. $12 billion for students with special needs, and $29 billion, all of these are in the billions, in Pell Grants to help low-income students pay for college. He says he has a national goal of providing school choice to every American child living in poverty. So I know we're going to discuss school choice and the implications of that. It means one thing when we're talking about independent African-centered schools. It can mean something totally different. I mean, imagine going to Trump University. Trump made it clear that $20 billion, the federal investment, would not be new money. In fact, what they want to do is do block grants. So I know a lot of you probably have fought those battles in healthcare, education, and all kinds of aspects of government where we're talking states' rights. That's what they're talking, giving it back to the states. And most of the time, the states don't do right. It's only when we put enough pressure on the system to make the feds begin to do right. Restore lending to private banks. You know, President Obama got rid of that. So they're going to gouge our children, our students again. One good thing, I'll give the devil his due. He's talking about 6 weeks of unemployment benefits to all new mothers. So we'll see how that comes out. But the Center for American Progress estimates that 490,000 educators, about 14% of all public school teachers, could have their positions eliminated, and students would lose access to $1.3 trillion. What he intends is to strip funding from the support of 56,000 public schools, 21 million children. Our battle lines as far as public education are clear. We're gonna have to resist. He's gonna gut public education if he keeps to his word. Now, it's hard to tell because he lies every other minute.
Right. Exactly.
But I always expect the worst of him. And I think we need to be prepared for that.
That's right.
Let me introduce our panel. It's very powerful. Some other folks might join us. I'm expecting one in particular and maybe another that is on the road. I guess I'll start at the far end. Alicia Bell Hardaway. Dr. Hardaway is assistant professor, Case Western Reserve University School of Law, Cleveland, Ohio. Akil Kalafani, associate professor of sociology, director of the Africana Institute, Essex County Community College, Newark, New Jersey. Still reading down this list, we're missing a couple people. Anyway, we have the great, my sister, I just love her, Attorney Thea Ora Rose Torre, founder, Voting Rights Museum, coordinator of the Bridge Crossing Jubilee in Selma, Alabama. But there's so many things that she does. I didn't want to make you stand out over everyone else. She's an author. She may favor us with a song, who knows? But one of the strongest voices and spirits in our movement. All right. Then we have Dr. Zachary Williams, associate professor of African American history, University of Akron, Ohio. He is also a member of the Institute of the Black World Board and is in the process of building the Black World Research Consortium. And it's not just for, with all love and respect, for eggheads, but it's also for folks who are doing practical activist work. You know, we're about praxis, you know, not just the research, but how do you apply the research to practical solutions? Brother Zach Williams. And then last but certainly not least, Dr. Gregory Carr.
All right.
Associate Professor, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University. In fact, he hosted us 4 years ago, among many at that institution. We had a great time, including Reverend Sister Shirley Graves here.
Yes.
Gravely Curry. Thank you. As the day goes on, no, I'm gonna mess up a lot of stuff. Y'all forgive me. All the errors are errors of failing physiology and mental capacity, and certainly it's not of the heart. But Dr. Carr.
Yes.
Ready. I know you're gonna light folks up. Please come up to the stage. Put your hands together, please.
Like church say, blame it on your head and not your heart. This your lozenge, brother. This is another form of the black church too. Somebody got a throat lozenge up here. That's yours, right? I ain't gonna touch it, man. Oh, you're right. Now that is black church. Stuck off the same lozenge, brother. We are in the same foxhole. Transform the Robert Tree into the great business swamp. That's all right, brother. Maroons must do that to survive. I think I should be all right with this. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
There's no reason, and I'm looking at the clock, and Zach was sitting there talking on time as possible, and I'm not going to take a lot of time because I think the most important thing about this gathering is always the most important thing about the Institute of Black World coming together. And we're looking around at each other and realizing that everybody in here is a soldier already, And I just wish we had 3 solid days of just talking to each other and then go somewhere and give it to the young people and the elders in the community to decipher and translate. So this really is going to be a sharing conversation because everybody has something to say. It's very important. And I know everybody won't talk in these moments, but over the arc of the next few days, I hope everyone will share. I know that's what I really have been looking forward to, is coming up here and getting a chance to be in community with so many folks. Last night at Howard, and a lot of the Howard folks are in the room. Y'all hear from Sister Waltrina this week. Y'all gonna be fired up by her. His sister's in the Rankin Memorial Chapel. You see where those aunts on over there. So put your hand up so everybody can see. It's one of the newest members of the Howard family. But you heard from her a little bit later. Absolutely. We were together, I guess that was Wednesday night in the chapel. She invited the students at Howard to come and try to process what had happened the day before. And we've been doing that all week. In fact, I would have been here yesterday, but Ta-Nehisi Coates and Jelani Cobb called up a couple of days ago and said, could they come down and talk to the students? So we were with them last night in conversation. And the beautiful thing about this cracker, Donald Trump and his white supremacist A-team, is that perhaps we can finally have the fight. White folks got safety pins on, talking about I'm a safe ally. No, take the pin off and go fight somebody. But this is the IBW. This is Brian Daniels' crazy black people. No, that's not, it's good. So I see him back there. So there are people in this room who remember when some of the white allies walked out of SNCC and, decided they would rather go fight the Vietnam War than go get their cousins. Well, as Du Bois said in the suppression of the African slave trade to the United States, the time to correct a moral wrong is when it occurs. And if you don't correct it at that time, it's gonna keep coming back. So white folks eventually got to fight each other, but that's really not our fight. What we're here to do this weekend, and perhaps we'll pick up some of these Africans who found out they were black Wednesday morning. What we will now do is now in this session, talk about this question of education. And it's very important because this election must be looked at for both its immediate and longer arc consequences. The question of education for our people is a political question, as our ancestor Asa Hilliard used to say. It's not a question of knowing what to do. We know what to do. The question is, do we have the will?
That's right.
And so with that in mind, I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs I wrote down because, I like to pretend like I'm a Negro academic at times. It's not good to do that too much because you forget that all that stuff ends up being an illusion. And then talk a little bit about what it means to have African-centered education. It's a difficult time because we've convened again on the arc of the IBW, name and by blood, to a very important institution that was formed out of Atlanta and had traces all over the world. And it was formed out of a thrust of an arc of things that happened in this city, of course, this sacred city. We're in sacred space. Sure. With Amiri Baraka and all of the people who are in this city, of course, as his son now takes the mayoralty. We were talking about Ross last night at Howard, because all them cats went to school together, Ross and Jelani and Ta-Nehisi and all them. But as this arc enters, it's hopefully the end of white supremacy in this country, which we've been saying that for a long time. Malcolm said that, so we just got to keep on pushing. We have to remember that our notions of Black nation are being formed every time we come together. In this moment, we're free. Y'all saw Birth of a Nation, right? Some of y'all saw the film, right? Remember that moment when they all standing in the woods? And what would you have been doing, man? I've been going to get that damn horse out the barn. Yeah, I'd have been. And then my man said, yeah, but not today. He said, no, not today. Right now, this is what freedom feels like. I'm looking around all these people who are heroes of mine, and women and men who have been long distance runners. All the students at Howard have a copy of the obituary of Amelia Robinson because Sister Faye put one in my hand and I made copies of it. So then who was that? No, and now they all know. I mean, that's because freedom fighters convene. And in this moment, we don't care who the president of the United States is. Not that we should ever really care. But this is because we are working in the wake. And that's where I want to go with these couple of paragraphs before I sit down. There's a new book out by a young sister, Christina Sharp. It's called In the Wake, on Blackness and Being. And she asks the question, she says, how are Black lives swept up and animated by the afterlives of slavery? All of our work as Africans still comes in the wake of that framing moment. And that framing moment remakes us every time we come together with this search for Africa. That's really what African-centered education is about. And so, I ask the question, it's the scale of enslavement that created African people in many ways. It's the scale of enslavement that made us think about ourselves as a big group. And in its wake, our rhythmic reactions have sought to imagine Black community to scale. So we talk about the Black world. We think in terms of scale. We want everyone, as Edward Blyden said, if my boys, we take students to Egypt every year. We standing in the pyramid this summer. And in that pyramid, in the pyramid of Khufu, I repeated what Hilary Teague, the great Liberian poet, said, and then Edward Wilmot Blyden. In the same place Paul Robeson sang Isis and Osiris, I said, you know, man, Edward Blyden said that Hilary Teague said, if my voice at this moment could have reached every African in the world, I would have said, from Pyramidal Hall, from thieves your ancestors call, retake your fame. That's the Black world. But guess what? Your voice can't reach every African in the world. So when we talk about the world, we're talking about communities that we're trying to build to scale, but it ain't but a handful of people in here. Physically, the ancestors are all around us, of course. But this has happened while the very historical acts and unleashed forces that generated our imaginaries have, with the material, cultural, and other resources we produced in their wake, all the places that made this place, those things have animated and systematized their own two-scale identities. We're in a country that was built with our labor, we know that, but that's what allows it to be to scale. And in building this to scale with our labor, they created their own to scale identity. Now we're responding in many ways to that to scale identity by trying to build our own to scale identities. But we're not rebuilding, we're building. We never had one like that. So imagining the Black world really becomes an exercise in educating ourselves to think beyond our narrowness, to think to scale. This set of two-scale relationships, the legal universe that regulates them, they've served to capture, literally and figuratively, the African in a corporal and conceptual grounding, a multitude from which we seek relief. So we're always looking to feel better. We're always looking to be better, but it's not a grouping, it's a multitude. In other words, everyone in here has a slightly different relationship. So what's going to be our language? This was the debate they were having in the 60s and 70s and 80s. This is what leads to what happened in Tanzania at the Sixth Pan-African Congress. Some of y'all in this room were there. This is this constant conversation we're having. What should we build to pull us together? African-centered education becomes that platform. I'm about to sit down because this is a conversation. No, because see, I know the Black church, this lozenge here is reminding me of the Black church, and I know at some point, if there ain't gonna be no sermon, you're supposed to sit down. We're gonna have a conversation. So I wanna put just a couple more points on. What is African-centered education? African-centered, we've heard from Brother Rick, it's a political formation. African-centered education extends from a constructed foundation of African knowledges, whatever that means, because we're still trying to unearth what African knowledges are and what they mean. African education has been a spear and a shield. It's a process and a set of techniques. But what does that mean? Well, in fact, see, I don't really mess with technology too much. So for some people, the foundations begin with ancient Egypt. That's why we take students to Egypt. That's why we teach them the hieroglyphs at Howard. That's why so many people in here have talked about classical Africa. Give them a conceptual grounding. But it doesn't necessarily have to start there. What it does have to have is the concept of Pan-Africa, a world. The underutilized corpus of our dynamic possessions, to steal from Wole Soyinka. Meaning what? Our dynamic possessions aren't our fingers and arms. Our dynamic possessions aren't the material resources. Our dynamic possessions are our minds. That's right. Is our culture. If you go to the new museum, New African American Museum, if you look at the narrative, they're narrating it, trying to make it about America. And I respect a lot of them cats. I know a lot of them dudes. I'm for them, the women and men. They trying hard to make this thing. But you know, we're bigger than this place. Why would say I'm large? I contain multitudes. So when you go in the basement, you got enslavement down there, and it's very powerful. And then you come up, and at the top, you're the singing and dancing. But that top floor, the cultural floor, because once you start singing, once you start painting and your drama, once you start moving, all the memory is in play. And that dynamic possession opens Africa up. You can't suppress that in the little narrow-ass red, white, and blue flag. Culture becomes the anchor for our multitudes, for our Black world. And so African-centered education, without it, we simply can't imagine what it means to have a Black world. It's our sword. It's our sword, meaning it allows us to fight bush scholarship, hush harbors, plantation schools, It's our shield. It protects our children from the traumas and triumphs in segregation. It protects our children from the evisceration of the law. And so finally, what should we do? I think most usefully, there's a lot more I could say, but there's a lot more we could all say. And we all will say. What we can do usefully for these next few minutes and for the rest of this entire days we're together, as this devil across the Hudson River cowers on the top floor of his tower. It took the Prime Minister of England 24 hours to reach him. He's somewhere either strung out on Xanax or losing his damn mind, as his feckless Mitch McConnell of the Senate struggles to figure out how the hell he's going to explain to them Kentucky coal miners they ain't never getting their jobs back. As that corn-pwned legislator from Milwaukee and his best friend, Paul Ryan and Reince Priebus, try to figure out that they finally caught the damn car. What do you do with it? And like Batman, the Joker said in Batman, I just do things. I don't know what to do with a car if I ever caught it. As the rest of them, as the Republican Party dissolves into a war of whiteness, this is our opportunity to remember in conversation with each other the things we did well in education, to collect them with Brother Zach into our compendium, to build the curriculum out, and to have our black world while the white one disappears. So I'm gonna go ahead
All right, get your hands together.
All right. All right.
I can say I didn't start it.
Oh, wait a minute. What he was talking about, and I ain't gonna, this is 30 seconds now here. This time last year when Ryan and called all them Negroes in May, we went up to Baltimore for a meeting, and that was the night they called the curfew. So this man out here talking crap to the police 50 yards from where everybody in CNN, everybody watching what's going on in Baltimore. We at the hotel 50 yards literally from the place, watching the tanks come off and the Clydesdales go up, and you talking crap to the police talking about, I ain't got to go inside. I'm saying, well, I might die today. But in this moment, we are free. If you saw the Black Panther documentary, you know what I'm talking about. When they were shooting at the police, my man said, in that moment, though, I was free. We was free that night. And not that I wanted to get shot, though, brother.
That's right. Yeah, it wasn't like
that was the story.
It wasn't like that bad, but
yeah, no,
we stood on the sidewalk and chanted certain things, sometimes expletives, you know. But they came up and said, you know, at 10 o'clock, I think it was, you got to get off the street.
Yeah, get off the street.
So, you know, I always have a response. And I said, I'm not on the street, I'm on the sidewalk. Well, we just came to tell you that, you know, 10 o'clock, you're gonna have to get off. But it was interesting. They had this National Guard. And
everybody.
It was painted for a desert, though. It was kind of strange. And they had them on horses, and they had them with shields. We're about a block from the city hall there. And some bad things happened all around us. But anyway, as Dr. Carr has said, I was thinking that our finest moments sometimes come challenges.
Yes, sir.
So the best of us comes out. And I particularly liked that top floor, that cultural floor. Yeah. Our soul and our shield. Mm-hmm. That's powerful, brother, powerful. Then we need to retake our fame, is it?
Yeah, retake.
And search for Africa. I know I've been searching. I got to do that DNA thing, you know, just see what it said.
You don't need that, brother.
I think I got so cynical, though, you know. But anyway, what we want to do is, and I think we can go in order. It works pretty good. And Zach, your interpretation and what you want to say about this search for Africa and the role of culture and how we need to use that in the development and survival of our people.
Greetings, everyone. Greetings to our ancestors and to our elders and to all those who are in the struggle for freedom and justice, which is continuous. It's a blessing and an honor to be able to be here. And I want to thank Dr. Daniels and all of IBW and all of the family here who have been waging the struggle for decades, and even our ancestors who have been waging before and even now with us. I just want to offer a few thoughts of observation just to begin, and then move out of the way so others can continue to contribute to the conversation. We can get to the main thing, which is hearing from all of you. One of the first things I just want to paint in terms of why is African-centered education important? I'll approach it from two ends. One, when I was growing up in South Carolina, My first introduction to education was through African-centered learning. I was introduced to the work of Dr. Carruthers and Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Naeem Akbar, and others, well before I even touched higher education. So even before I even came to know about scholars at Howard University, I knew and had a sense of affirmation of who I was. I would watch an African-centered television show on South Carolina Education TV on Sunday afternoon with my grandmother, who was a domestic and a cook, and taught me the importance of community and dignity. And I would watch the show Levester Middleton, and he would talk about Africa and introduce me to a lot of folk who would help to brighten my path and open my horizon to what was possible in terms of education, where one could go. From there, I began to trek right up the street to the public library and began to look through the different books in the different aisles, because we had a regular card catalog then, so we didn't have the system where you would type in and find the books easy. I would go through book by book, and I knew where they were even before I got there. And maybe even I might have checked out the books and never given them back, but to me, knowledge was more important in my hands, in the hands of my community, than giving it back to an institution that might not have cared about us. Amen, brother. And I'm going somewhere in just a minute. I just want to say that it was that grounding, and a man by the name of Donald Burden, who when I went to college would help to educate me about Naeem Akbar and other scholars, and helped to give me a sense of affirmation, sense of self, that emboldened me to be able to go to Clemson University in the heart of the South, on the place where there's a plantation to this day, a place that was built by convict lease labor at the age of 13 years old, who never got any sort of acknowledgement, the place where I took history classes and began to declare a major in African-American history and African-American studies. It was that grounding in Afrocentric education and at my grandmama's knee that gave me the early start I needed to have me a sense of becoming.
Right. Yes.
Translate that to today. In our inner cities, and I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's a place of struggle like many other places. When I saw Newark, I saw Cleveland, I saw Detroit, I saw Chicago, I saw New York, I saw everywhere at the same time. It seems like the same old story, but in a different form. And so I remember one day not too long ago when I walked my daughter into a school that's named after Mohandas K. Gandhi. And that says enough in and of itself. Peace and nonviolence, but it's a public charter school, a place where another school used to exist, but it doesn't exist anymore, like a lot of schools in inner cities that were gutted in multiple numbers all across this country, in the same neighborhood, the same community, with the same distress situations, which were never dealt with, never corrected, never addressed in any kind of a way. People suffering and struggling, invisible, going unnoticed. At this school where I've been waging a struggle and a battle every day over curriculum, over zero tolerance policies that the Justice Department and the Attorney General has said are wrong and need to be corrected, yet are still practiced. Yes, sir. Yes. Our kids are being over-criminalized and being intimidated, and the life and the creativity and the beauty out of them is being sapped out in the name of zero tolerance and this sort of yardstick that does not have any sort of connection to our people. It was a particular incident that I want to point out that framed my understanding and helped take me back to where I was, and help me to understand what we need to do and how we collectively need to move forward. There was a young girl who was on the corner once I drove up with my daughter. And I took my daughter into school like I normally do, rushing and running, trying to beat the bell. And they're starting school, and nobody knows that they're actually going to start and do anything at the time that they're starting, but they're starting early, and there are penalties if you get there late. And what they're saying is that you begin to send messages home about you will be caught in danger of educational negligence if you are late so many times. Not just not in school, but late. And I even had to reach out to a lot of colleagues and mothers and elders with the Black Education Congress about an early incident that sort of triggered this disciplinary ethos and focus that does not have any love or care or effect. And so the struggle has been going on for a while. But this one day, there was this young girl who was on the corner after I took my daughter in and came back, who was screaming and yelling at the top of her lung, crying, "I forgot my folder." Over and over again, "I forgot my folder. I forgot my folder. I forgot my folder." And we went over to her, me and another young lady, to console her and her mother, who obviously had to go to work, and asked her what was going on. First, I thought she was saying, "I forgot my phone," which is how we critique the younger generation, to say that they're so materialized and unconcerned. But when we got a little closer and listened to her, we found out she was saying, "I forgot my folder." Why was she concerned about that? Well, she knew that if she forgot her folder and went to school, there was a penalty. She would be sent to detention, and that would, in many ways, impact her day and her educational learning. And so for me, that was the last straw. Because that was part of a larger system and struggle to say that our kids are not being educated. And so this farce of school choice is nothing but a farce. Our kids, on whatever guise it's put, don't have a choice in the educational direction of their lives. And how can you have an educational direction when you have over 99.9% of our children in school, but the curriculum does not reflect their background, history, or culture? It's not mandatory. How could it still not be mandatory in 2016, the time of a black president, and now at a time when white nationalism is just one doorstep away from the White House? And quiet. And so when we went back to console this young girl, all I could think about is not just my 2 young daughters, but every kid in that school and every kid all across this country. Every time I look in the eyes of young people, I say, we have work to do. We have a responsibility. And we can't get caught up in Negro egoism or any other things that block us a challenge us from being able to do the larger work. I like what the Imam said earlier. He said, if there's work to do, we don't have time to be worried about other stuff. And I think about all the churches and schools and other places that have people filled to capacity, but after Sunday morning or after Sunday service, they don't go out and do anything. There's no public outcry going into our schools to try to address what's going on. And if the matter of education is of prime importance, then we should be there first and foremost. And so that young girl is still in my heart and my mind as I sit here today. And so for her jumping and screaming, I said, she doesn't need to be punished. That young girl needs to be championed for caring enough about her education to say that she cares and it matters. So I just offer that to say that we need to really change this whole notion of education. Go back to the African-centered approach and reclaim that space. And I'll just say one more thing. In the state of Ohio, special education and gifted education are part and parcel of the same coin. Funding is oftentimes given disproportionately to gifted education while we're tracked into special education. And people are fine with that. But I think that's something we need to change, and we need to only do it as we work together.
Whoa, we're on fire up in here. We're on fire up in here. Now,
Yes.
Here's the fire, now the book.
Okay. Unlike this brother, I did not have that foundation of African-centered education. I went to segregated school. I didn't know. Didn't even know that our people were the builders of the first civilization. They didn't teach me in my segregated school. I went to HBCU in Charlotte, North Carolina. Graduated #1 in my class, still didn't know. I went to Harvard Law School. They didn't teach me. What I want to talk about briefly in my remarks is what we can do. I have a few suggestions. And I came across this book, Self-Taught. And I knew some of the information in this book. I knew that we were prohibited from reading. I knew we could be killed for reading. There were that specifically said if you read or grew your own crops, the penalty was death. What I didn't know is the determination and resilience of our people to resist that terror. I knew about Frederick Douglass hiding away to read and tricking white boys to read. But I didn't know that our people were so ingenious that they built caves and hid away in those caves to learn to read. Our biggest problem is one of the largest, biggest problem white supremacy has done to us to instill in our children an undesire to read. So one of the greatest challenges we face is to learn how to teach ourselves. Institutions controlled by white people will never teach us. Never teach us. I want to stop and recognize, I hope he will not be embarrassed. But I want all the people from Alabama who came to me stand. One of my sisters is sick, but would y'all stand real quickly? Alabama in the house. Alabama in the house.
Right.
Okay.
I'm in the house.
Okay. Thank you. Now, Sip, if you will not be embarrassed by this, you told me this is your story. If you don't be embarrassed, would you please stand? Y'all were calling him a returned citizen. I met Sip after spending, I don't know how many years in prison. He would tell you, talk to him when you leave here. He didn't know how to read when he went to prison. He didn't know he was miseducated when he went to prison. He was a menace to our society when he went to prison. But he did what? He began to teach himself. And there are a few scholars in this room who know any more about our history than Simp. I could say the same thing for Kari, even though he's not a returning citizen. My point is, we got to find a way to teach ourselves and to inspire our children to want to teach themselves and to read and learn for themselves.
Yes.
I truly believe that this is an opportune time to do this.
Yeah.
God works in mysterious ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Some see Trump as a disaster. I see him as a blessing.
That's right. Come on.
2 weeks ago,
Take your time.
we called a meeting, a reparations meeting in Selma. 150 people showed up last week. They don't even quite know what reparations is, but they know they got a right to something. They know they got a right to something. And this might be the most opportune time in our history to build a grassroots movement for reparations. 150 people showed up. Now, I must admit, I was in the Black farmers case for so many years, since 1998. And so a lot of people identify me with that little money the Black farmers got, that little 50,000. I only got one client that got 14 million, the Sherrods. That's the only client I had that got a part of what they do. So a lot of times when they come to these meetings, they think they're gonna get some immediate money, but I make it clear to them, this is a long distance struggle. But one of the main things I do at that meeting is to teach them the history they were never taught in school.
Yes.
And to inspire them to teach themselves. Self-taught. How do we inspire our people to teach themselves? How do we inspire churches and schools and organizations? I just want to share with you a few of the things that we're trying to do. I'm not going to lie to you and say we are real successful, but I want to share with you some of the things we are trying to do in the Black Belt of Alabama. There was a school, Asa Hilliard came, God bless him, and began, I wanted to integrate the civil rights movement with the nationalist movement because all of our movements are too divided. The Pan-Africanists here, the civil rights here. We got to find a way to bring all of our movements together because we're one people. And no one voice and no one strategy can win by itself. So Asa came, but unfortunately died before I could completely do what I wanted to do. But Tony Browder came and began to talk to civil rights people and talk to the schools in our area. And we got one school in Perry County to agree to integrate Black history into the system. One school. It happened to be the same county where Jimmy Lee Jackson was killed, which triggered the Bloody Sunday March. But the superintendent said, I want to do this, Rose, but I don't know where to start. Don't wait for no grants, just start.
That's right.
So I got with the young people and we wrote a book called There's a River Flowing. And this book starts in ancient Africa and go all the way up through what I call the Black Belt Renaissance. And it's a history book with music. And in the back of the book, there's a CD sung by children from Perry County in the 21st century. So for every history lesson in this book, there's a song to reinforce the history. Now you told me I could sing a little song. I didn't want to go over my time, but I'm gonna add that song to my time.
You're all right.
I don't want to take away with my time. So to give you an example, I want to give you an example of what can be done. So our children thought that Abraham Lincoln freed them. You ask any Black children, they'll tell you, oh, Abraham Lincoln freed me. So in this book, we talk about the 200,000 Black soldiers who fought in the war, the 40,000 that died. But I said, I'm gonna make sure that every child, even if they're 4 years old, remember this history lesson. So I'm gonna teach you the song that I teach them. And all you have to do is repeat after me, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I need a beat. 200,000 men. 200,000 Black men. 200,000 Black men. 40,000 died. 40,000 died. We sing this song for the forgotten ones. fought to end slavery. They died for you and me. 200,000 men. Now you ask any child, once you teach that child, a 4-year-old child could learn that song. She said, how many black men died in the Civil War?
200,000.
How many died?
40,000.
And what did they die for?
You and me.
That one song. So even if they don't remember all the language in the song, they will remember that song. They remember that song. And everything in this book is written in the first person, so they can identify with it.
Not that one. What is that? I already bought it.
Another thing I want.
How can you get it? Yeah.
Y'all using up my minutes. I don't like to go over time. Okay, so in going with ancient Africa, I want them to learn the principles of Ma'at. Okay, the principles are in the book, but there's a song that says what? Ma'at. I'm not going to teach you that song, but I'm going to teach you another one real quick. Again, to break the ice. There's a river flowing in my mind. That's the name of the book. So many of our children feel so disconnected and so devalued. In Perry County, the school system is 99.9% black. So I asked the black children, I stood them up in the line. I said, if you feel beautiful, take a step up. They took the step. I said, if you feel inferior, take 2 steps back. They step back. They step back. It's the lion game. It's in the book. I describe it. So I asked them, tell me the truth. Why is it, do you believe that, why is it white children have left your school? They said, because they think they are smarter than us. That's how black children feel. You have seen the black doll, white doll test, but that's how they feel. So this is a song I wrote to remind them of how valuable they are. Y'all gonna repeat after me again?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, this is one you got to sing with me. And I'll sing the same verse and you sing with me. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind. And it's telling me. And it's I'm somebody. I am somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. Now you add names to it, like there's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind. Malcolm X told me I am somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. And you add verses, and if you are from the Christian faith, Almighty God told me I am somebody. There's a river. Come on, y'all. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my mind. Flowing in my mind. All right. When children learn things through songs, there's songs in here like Black is So Beautiful, It's So Beautiful to Be Black. And the children of Perry County sing these songs. But it's just not enough to have the literature. How do you get it out to the people? This is what I'm suggesting. If we're really serious about this work, we have to develop what I call Black History Brigades. That means we have to commit to go to the children. They're not coming to us. Middle class children have exposure, but not exposure to Black history. So you might can reach them to your clubs, but in order for those children to live in public housing, you got to go to public housing. We took an old RV in Selma. Patrick, stand up. We took an old RV and we put a library on that RV and a recording studio. that we can take from community to community, because it's the music that brings the children in. I just saw my sister, Karen, stand up right quick. Single-handedly takes on the school system in Montgomery. But she lives in a city where 2 schools are named after Jeff Davis, Robert E. Lee. Black children are forced to go to those schools every day, and if they don't go, they can be arrested for truancy. How hard? There's a black superintendent, but we cannot get that school renamed. Let me tell you, color folks, something. No Jewish people would live in America and allow any school to be named after Nazi, not to mention Hitler. It is our responsibility to have a national campaign to remove all these racist names from our children's schools. It is our obligation to do that. We can do that. We cannot depend upon anybody else to do that but us. Now, I was arrested in Selma for just trying to get Nathan B. Forrest removed by a black man.
All right.
That's how miseducated we are. The Emmett Pettus Bridge, I'm coming down. The Emmett Pettus Bridge in Selma is named after the Ku Klux Klaner, the Grand Dragon. Do you know John Lewis, the congressman that was built on that bridge? Congressman Lewis do not want that bridge renamed. This is a part of the miseducation. So in sum, I want us to commit to find ways, because what works for me might not work in your community. Find ways in your church. We developed something in churches that did not work for me, but it's called Church Rise. Black history to the church. Having a library in the church with black books. Giving children money at the end of Sunday school if they could quote from that book. Okay. Righteous churches can do that. I got a little curriculum for a Church Rise. What you can do in your community if you don't have a lot of soldiers, got caught reading once a week. Let the children in the neighborhood know that you're going to come through that neighborhood. And if they read that book, the Frederick Douglass book, and it was 73 pages, costs $2 on the internet. If they're reading that book, and you come by their house and they're reading it, give them a $2 bill. The bill, you know, the bill with our first black president on it. Find creative things to do in your community to teach. When we had that reparations meeting 2 weeks ago, if all those people showed up, you know we used it for, Ron? To teach our history. They had no idea that we built the pyramids. They had no idea that we were the builders of civilization. They didn't even know what reparations was, but they sat there quietly and listened. I think this is a golden opportunity to use the reparations movement to bring thousands of people together. She could tell you, we can't bring nobody in Alabama together. Alabama gave the world 3 national civil rights movement. You can't draw 200 people to a rally, but they'll come for reparations because they think they're gonna get some money. So why not use that to have people there, literature there, prepared to tell them. We publish something every day. This is another book we do, The Martyrs of the Movement. We want the young black men in the street to know you killing each other. We want you to know how they killed us. I don't want to talk any longer, but thank you so much.
All right. Well, at this rate, if the fire keeps increasing, we're going to have to call the fire company. So we're going to burn up this place. Doctor.
Yes,
California. The floor is yours, sir, and you certainly have. You didn't do bad, Faye. You
I don't like
almost doubled the time.
I don't like going
We'll
over
give
time.
folks a little time to whatever you want to call it. Yes, sir.
Yes.
And then we got the audience also.
First of all, I want to say greetings to everybody. And I want to say, ask permission from my elders to begin, because we have plenty of elders in the room. I want to thank you. Now, I was going to say some other things, but actually I changed what I was going to say based on what's said. And that's the beauty of going before folks who have gone before me, going after them, rather. Start off with my brother Carr. You know, I think that if there's a book that doesn't have his fingerprints on it, it probably doesn't exist. So I'm always honored to come and hear him and see what he does, because he is such a erudite scholar that he's an example of the type of scholarship that we need young folks to be emulating today. And, you know, the one thing I want us to focus on is that in thinking about education and transforming the way we do education, we oftentimes have lofty ideas about how to do it. And I've worked with lots of folks in building educational institutions. I had one that I started back in the Ubuntu Academy in 2005. I worked with Sister Frederica Bay and Sister Io and all the folks of Wisdom, and we work with Adelaide L. Sanford Charter School. And now today, there's a group of us. There's 8 families and 10 children, and we've started the Ma'at Shule, which is a African-centered homeschool collective. And thank you. But what I want to say is that as we approach anything that we do, we neglect to take into consideration that always in our midst is an enemy. Right. And Malcolm X tried to get us to understand that. And there may be some here, I say hello to you. Well, Malcolm would say, don't even say maybe. He would say that we know that there's somebody in our midst.
That's right.
And so that, and even if they're outside and they got microphones listening, we need to begin to prepare what we do in a form and fashion, knowing that there's someone, even if it's just greed, trying to undermine the very things that we do. And when we don't prepare for that, we prepare ourselves to fail.
That's right.
Yes.
And so as we do what we do and we think revolutionary, in a revolutionary fashion, that we've got to figure out how we deal with that element that's in our space when we're developing something. That we've got to have a tool in our toolbox that is an Uncle Tom tool.
Watch out.
That is an Aunt Tamina tool. And I say that knowing that I might offend some folks, and that's not my objective. So I come in love and admiration of what we're here doing today, and respect for those elders who struggled to make it possible for me and us to be here today. But I also come in knowing that in all the struggles that I've been in, there oftentimes is 1 or 2 people who undermine years of work. And we've got to get to the place where we are not willing to allow that to happen. That we have the tools in place to make sure that those folks are isolated. And I say that one of the ways that we do that is that we've got to get back to our own African-centered spiritual foundations, because they have mechanisms for dealing with that process. And that we've got to get back to understanding that we can and we should uplift ourselves, but that we have to be holistic about whatever it is that we do. That we've got to surround ourselves with a set of tools that ensures that failure is not a possibility.
Right.
That undermining is not a possibility, and that when we approach folks like that in South Africa, they developed, and I'm not saying that we do what they did in South Africa, because they had some necklaces that people thought were beautiful for some people who were undermining things. And I'm not saying that that's the best strategy, right? But I'm saying that we've got to begin to think about all of the ways and systems that can undermine what we do. And some of them are internal and some of them are external. And that our holistic approach means that we've got to study, as many of you all in here do, study both the essence of things. And I wrote this book called The Hidden Debate. And in there, I developed this theory called the shell core embedded conflict theory, because once we study what we think is the essence, oftentimes there is a center of the center that we still missed. So that we missed the main thing that we are looking at, like people talk about affirmative action, but what I argue the debate in there is about liberty, equality, and justice. What is the underpinning thing that we really got to get to really bring about the transformation of our community the way we're looking at it? So when we talk about an African-centered education, right, for our children, is that just about history? Is that just about math and science? Or does that also include diet? Right? Does that also include spirituality that somebody else says we shouldn't have in the middle of what we do? What is it that that means, and how do we define what holistic means? We've got to define those things for ourselves. We've got to define what it means to have equality, justice, liberty for ourselves. When folks got free from enslavement from Europeans, W.E.B. Du Bois talked about that these folks got free, and then after they thought they were free, they thought that freedom included equality and justice, and so they thought they had the same thing the Europeans had, but what they had was a new form of subjugation. And are we creating new forms of subjugation for ourselves, or are we actually trying to get free? Right? So that when we define what freedom is, that make sure that we're not embedding in it some form of sexist oppression. Make sure we're not embedding in it some form of economic oppression. Make sure we're not embedding in it some other form of something that's limiting our success while we watch out for time at the same time. Right. But make sure that, and I don't want to go on that because I have something specific that I need to say about New Jersey. Right here in New Jersey, there's a couple of things we need to think about, and this is a template for other places. So that the governor in the state of New Jersey is now talking about changing the funding equation, and all the suburban communities now are talking about, since they're going to get rid of the whole Abbott funding and redo the calculation. Watch out, your calculation is coming next. That they're talking about redoing the calculation, so moving the monies that are for the poor inner city schools and giving more money to the urban schools. That even, I live in West Orange, I just ran for office there in West Orange. They're talking about that you're going to have something in around between $2,600 to $3,600 additional dollars per student. They're like, oh, that sounds good, because that means that's going to lower the tax base in the suburban communities, right? So that sounds good to all the suburban communities. But what does that really mean for school education throughout the entire state? It's a problem. The other piece is that here in New Jersey, we started something, and Bill Payne is in the room somewhere, started the Amistad legislation. The Amistad legislation brought into being the idea that you have to have African-centered education for everybody throughout the state, but even our African teachers are not teaching it. Right, so even when we have the tool, we're not valuing the very tool that we have. So how do we do the things they're talking about when there's these tools, but we're not employing them? Right? Because they're only not employing them because, and this is what I told Bill, and I said that they're not doing it because they're not on the test. Right? And so since they're not on the test, we don't value its placement, because it's being said to us that if it's not on the test, it's not worth teaching. We haven't determined the value of our own education. There should not be a question in Newark, East Orange, Irvington, any of these places where we're the majority, where it should be a question whether or not in Newark, in Trenton, in Camden, where African-centered education is at the center. But it's us, we're elected in those places for the most part, and we are not pushing the envelope. We're not insisting upon it. So that it's not about charter versus public, they're all public. Any place that your child is, I don't care if it's a private school, that if your child is there, it has a certain amount of public to it because the public has an influence. What are we willing to do to take to the places where our kids are, the influence of our community? And so we have to rally around, like Sister was saying, and go to those places. We need to go to those Board of Ed meetings. There should not be a Board of Ed meeting that doesn't have a whole plethora of folks. But you know what? My ex-wife lives in the suburbs and my son goes to school there. When they have a school night, you can't find a parking spot for a mile. Hello. People walk for almost a mile from the school because there's nowhere to park. You come in our schools and there's not only there's parking, you can park right up in the principal spot almost, because we don't show up. We've got to change the mentality of our people that says that we've got to be vested in our community. We've got to be engaged. So we have to open the minds of our community, of our parents, to say, come on now. We have to be invested in our children's success. And if we are not there, of course, nobody else is going to do it. So the revolution starts within us thinking different and knowing that there's an enemy sitting outside. And sometimes that enemy has inched into our brain. And that's what Carter G. Woodson said. He said that in the miseducation of the Negro, he says to us that we as scholars, we go out and we propagate white supremacist ideas and notions, and they ain't got to do it anymore. So let us not continue to do the things that they have done. Malcolm said that they move the chains from your eyes, they put them behind your eyes, and they're on your brain. Let us remove the chains in all forms and fashions, and let us get to the place where we are pushing the envelope and thinking holistically about it in all of its forms and fashions, because we cannot continue to piecemeal our way into the next generation of education, the next generation of leadership. We've got to do it holistically from every facet that you can think of. And I'm honored that we're all here to do that. But we got to get on, and we got to address the last thing I'll say. We got to address the disease in our community, and that major disease is not AIDS, it's not blood pressure, it's mediocrity. We got to get rid of mediocrity. Our students come to school and they sit like this. They got their hats on, and we let them sit up like that. No. If they're in your class, if it's your child going to school, tell them to sit up. Tell them to come and be ready. Tell them to read the books. To make sure that they come and do the things that are necessary to be 110%. They went to caves to read. We're not willing to take the books that are free and read them. I'll stop there.
All right. I'm glad you brought that up, Brother Kill. I'm glad you brought that up. I call that the automatic Negro. I don't need no master. I beat myself. You can do that to James Brown. All right, sister.
Wow. So I haven't had a voice since Friday. It's a long time to be for a lawyer and a panelist to be without a voice, but I'm gonna do the best that I can. I'm honored to be here, and much love and blessings to everybody. I had an opportunity to speak with Dr. Daniels at the start, before this started, and I don't see him in the room here right now, but I'll embarrass him and say, my second class that I took in the Black Studies department at the College of Worcester, a small white liberal arts college in the middle of Ohio, Dr. Daniels was my professor. And so it's kind of serendipitous that I would be invited to be a part of this event this year to speak. So thank you to everybody who has helped make this happen. So thinking about the topic as you identified it, Brother Rick, education and culture, I want to just lift up a little bit about on the culture side and how our high school and our college students, regardless of if they're in predominantly Black institutions or majority white institutions, how they're using technology to proclaim their unapologetic Blackness. Specifically at the high school where I'll call it my adopted hometown, because I wasn't born and raised there, but I've been there since 1984, and where my children have attended. Those students in that high school have made their presence felt in a way that when I was a student there, I wasn't able to do. It's Shaker Heights, Ohio. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it, but it's kind of put out there as the bastion of integration and peace, love, and harmony. And we want all the Black folks to come here, be welcomed, and be integrated. And I'll say during my time there, I certainly experienced racism, but that racism was felt from adults. That was from teachers, administrators, the parents of my fellow classmates. Some of them had the same color as me. But because I came from the projects and they were middle class folks, right, they assumed that their children were supposed to do better than me. What our children are facing now in the district is, some people call it the white backlash, right? But they're experiencing it from their fellow classmates, right? This notion that you don't belong here has been touted as this place of integration for a very, very long time. Interestingly enough, it has to be the most segregated, integrated building I've ever been in my life. And that's a result of the academic tracking that they do. For a long time, you had to be selected, whether it be by testing or just a recognition of your gifting, in order to be in honors or AP classes. And for a long time, none of us were in those classes. I would say in the last maybe 5 years or so, more of our students and our parents are becoming hip to the game, right? You just tell them you want to take the class. It's really that simple. And as a result of that, our students are feeling a little bit more emboldened and willing to be a part of it. But then they feel, as my own daughter did, who is brilliant beyond measure, not just because she's mine, but because she came that way, are feeling the backlash of, you don't belong here, right? Like you're supposed to be in that class down the hall. You're not supposed to be in this class right here with us. And the white people are even calling it black privilege. Black privilege in Shaker, when you get to pick which class you want to be in. And to their credit, the students in the building, and I know it does enormous psychological and emotional damage to us on some level, right? Where we have to deal with other people's low expectations and belief systems about us. The students just are not having it, y'all. They just are not having it, and I'm so proud of them. Part of that was evidenced most recently. You all may have heard last week about an incident after the election where one student said some very racist and bigoted things about the Black people, her Black classmates in the building. It went viral, and it made the news near to home and far. Essentially what happened was, after the election, an Asian American student who was adopted and raised by white people put on her Snapchat that the Clinton loss was the result of Black people not voting. You all have yourselves to blame, her Snapchat said. And that hit a nerve with a Jewish American female student who had some prior conversations with this Asian American student about her views. The Asian American woman or girl, because she's only like 15, so I give her lots of grace. I pray that she turns her way, it becomes more enlightened and turns her viewpoints around. But she said things like, she's pro-LGBT, she's pro-feminism, but of course she's anti-Black. Have you seen how the Black students act in the hall? They're lazy, they're threatening, they're creepy, and they're needy, right? And all of this was in a text message. All of this was in a text message. So credit to the Jewish American student. She posted on her Snapchat. And from the Snapchat, my dear friend's daughter got a hold of it and said, do you mind if I put it on Twitter? Well, she put it on Twitter and said, I can't believe I have to go to school with people who think like this. And when she did, it got the attention of all sorts of folks from the ACLU, Sean King, D-Ray, all sorts of folks are retweeting this. And the district does what the district always does, because it's Shaker and it's the bastion of integration. We're just gonna sweep this under the rug and pretend like it didn't happen, right? And then they call the two students, the Jewish American girl and a Black student, Maya, who I love dearly. They call Maya down and they say, you're suspended. Be disciplined, right? Why? Because they exposed the racism and the bigotry, right? And it was more about the privacy of the individual to say what she wanted to say, and she shared it in a private text message, right? Than it was about our students to have the right to call it out. And as a result of that, Maya, first of all, called her mama. Like we tell all our people, call your mama, call your mama. She called her mama, and she called her sister, who's a first year at Howard University. And her sister, Mecca Husamaddin. Okay, and Mecca blasted the school district on Twitter, right? And so there was this big uproar. So all the students found out that Maya was supposed to be suspended on Friday. My son went to school with his T-shirt that said "We Out," Harriet Tubman, 1840 something that says. Right. I had just bought it for him. We out. We out. He went to school with his "We Out," and they staged a blackout, and they were walking through the halls screaming, shouting, "F Trump, free Maya," right? F Trump, free Maya. Right. And the school they were outraged. They said, well, now you caused a disruption. Well, they had already accused her of causing a disruption because students were coming into the office to ask questions about what they were going to do to address the viewpoints of this student, and the fact that she attributed her viewpoints to her mother, who works as a secretary at one of the elementaries. So her citing authority was, this is what my mother tells me about Black people. Of course it's true. So they wanted, so the students were asking, what are you gonna do about this girl? And how long is her mother gonna be employed by the district? They considered that a disruption. So I say all of that to say the ACLU got involved, I got involved, I did an open letter, and fortunately enough, Maya's suspension was rescinded. But yeah. And I clap for Maya, right? Because Maya had to look in the face of all of her classmates, white and black, right? Who felt like, oh man, now you brought disgrace to our district. Everybody sees our dirty laundry, right? And Maya had to deal, even the Jewish American girl who shared the first one, she said, she regretted doing it and she wished she hadn't done it, right? It's too much, I just want it to go away, was her words. And Maya said, oh no, I'd do it all over again.
All right.
I do it all over again. The students, in spite of the white backlash that they're experiencing, they have a group called Sankofa. And they put on every year, they put on a week-long production and they pack the house for every performance. And they do this in spite of the fact that they don't really have the support of the administration, right? Fortunately, they have the support of people, like me, who are willing to stand with them, but I'm not in the building all day, every day. And so that matters. So I'm just really, really proud of them. I think culturally, they may not, as you say, my brother, they may not do everything that they should do. And I know it wasn't until my son took the AP African American history course that he actually developed a love for reading, and we realized that he is a phenomenal writer, right? And so there really is power in providing them the space to learn about where they come from and who they are, to ignite that magnificent intellectual brain that we possess as African people. But I think culture really is important for our current students, regardless of what institution they're in. They are standing up and they are speaking out. I believe that it's our duty to stand with them. That it's our duty to stand with. It's not our duty to tell them how to do it.
No.
All right.
It's our duty to stand with them. Right? Of course, they can learn from, they can listen to and hear our sage wisdom, right? Our sage advice about what worked or what may not work and where to watch for a trap here and how to identify the tom over there, right? But ultimately, the way that they want to do it, we just need to be in support. They are extremely thoughtful, and more radical than I was, and I thought I was radical. I wore my hair like this. I had, my black fist. I thought I was radical. They don't give a damn, y'all. They don't give a damn. They want to tear it up, and we need to stand with them. So that's all.
All right. Yeah. What's fascinating what you shared as I was listening to it. One was the use of technology, which is something new. We certainly, like many of us, I was typing on a typewriter.
Yes.
I still have nightmares about that. But you got family at Howard.
Yes.
Getting involved. So, and I know what the kind of work you're doing there in terms of raising people's African consciousness. And then the fact that, Yesha, you come to us as a student of Dr. Ron Daniels,
yes,
our founding president here.
Yes.
So when you start to look at that and how these things, sometimes I get asked, what are y'all, you got having another meeting? When they're talking about this one, I said, it was only every 4 years, give me a break. But the important thing is what I told some people about the Million Man March. Well, what's gonna come out of it? I said, if we get one Fannie Lou Hamer,
that's right.
we get one Malcolm X.
That's right.
That's right.
Take your pick, who
That's
you want
right.
to name. If we get anybody like that out of it, it's all worth it.
That's right.
Some young man or woman is looking at this and saying, that's where I need to be, and I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna take responsibility. That's what it's all about, that river, that unbroken flow. Yeah. Let me tell you what we're gonna do here. We got some time to take some questions. And Jaziri, don't you, Brother Jaziri, don't you go out the room. Our hip hop ambassador, and he's a brilliant young man. He's all over the place getting honorary doctorates, but he's in the streets, he's in the universities. I see him out in parts of the world. I'm like, come on, brother, slow up. You're tiring me out, but you're doing good work. I want to point him out because they're going to use this room, see, at 3:30. You know how long it is. I know those of us in this room are going to take a break, but then you need to come back and be, we're talking about young people and connecting with them and giving them support and guidance. Well, we can hear them speak, particularly from the hip hop community. So there's a lot of powerful young brothers and sisters that will be here out of that community. So if you have some questions about how they flow and what they're saying and how they're using technology and the whole cultural piece in a totally different way, but a similar way to the Black cultural, the 60s and earlier, there's been several iterations of that. And certainly I'm a firm believer that we need a cultural revolution again, so that we don't have these magic Negroes with these silly ideas holding us back. So what we're gonna do is, first of all, I want to remind you, or make you aware, if it's not a reminder, that we have 3 sessions on Saturday. And the whole point of this, the whole point of IBW is not to build this big membership organization, classical hierarchical structure. The whole purpose is for us to meet each other, folks who are doing similar work, to form those relationships and communication networks. And when you're here this weekend, we talk about some of the things that have been raised, and we've gotten some solutions. Thank you, Sister Faya, and thank you, Akil, and everyone who's given folks ideas of things we can do. The key thing is when you get in these sessions on Saturday, it's not about what IBW will do. It's about what you commit to do with each other in that room, and then how you engage the rest of us in the IBW network to support it. For instance, the idea about a national campaign, names, I know in Pittsburgh, PA, we got them names. As you said earlier, I'm glad you said it first, them cracker names on them buildings. In our own communities, it don't make no sense. Same reason I'm not cooperating with the orange man that's supposed to be the president. It would be like a Jew working with the Nazi party. I don't think so. I don't think so.
That makes sense.
So anyway, on Saturday, 9 to 11:30, the role of culture and education, empowerment, and healing is one session. So a lot of these things, if that's your focus of interest, you can be there. I'm sure Brother Greg, Faya will be there. I hope this brother Naseed, gifted, I don't know if he's made it. He had some things he had to do in the school district, but this young man got a comic book, and he got he's doing some stuff. He blew my mind when I read, his book. He's engineering, he's doing stuff STEM, encouraging young African-American men and women to get with the STEM program. So he's not here maybe today, but he'll be there on Saturday. 1 to 3:30, we're gonna talk about the challenges and opportunities in educating and empowering future generations. Well, in my mind, part of that is all in about K through 12 and what could be done. And so when it was pointed out Bill Payne was here, I know he's coming to tell us about that Armstead legislation. That was very key to me. I mean, public policy is a big piece of what we got to do. Talk is talk, but then there's ways you turn that into action and even enforcement if, as you said, elected officials support it and educators embrace it and implement it. If it's just on a piece of paper, nothing happens. But guess what? All of us in the room can make it happen. Once we go down to school and say, what about this act? What are you doing about it? And demand accountability. 4 to 5:30, it's 3 sections. The crisis in Black studies and the necessity of Black think tanks in the 21st century. I'm a product of Afro-American, what do we call it then? A major in Afro-American studies, and a double major in political science in my undergrad. And in fact, one of the independent studies back in the late 60s, early 70s, we conducted for Bowdoin, devised for Bowdoin College, the first interdisciplinary African-American studies program for that institution. It was very valuable information for me, and the courses that came out of it certainly were the same. And you heard the testimony of the effect people personally had with being exposed to the knowledge, to the truth. So Brother Zach Williams, as I said to you, the Research Consortium, which again, it's not us trying to line everybody up to say, look who's all in our consortium. No. We got public intellectuals. We got people who want to research and write. We want to provide a forum where they can get some of their stuff circulated, i.e. published. We also want to make that connection to the grassroots so that the people who need it the most, us sitting in academia talking to ourselves has very little value in the real world.
That's right.
We don't get it out of that can and get it to where people can use it.
Yes, sir.
We need to think of those nuggets of education as literally bullets, theoretical gun. That's a weapon for our liberation. Questions. I do have one that was sent up to us. And so at one point, I don't think I finished. be finished. So now we got a good bit of time. It's 2:38. So we have a great point. We do have a mic that'll be passed around. Let me read this question. How can someone that has been indoctrinated, educated in a Eurocentric educational institution develop a political educational for Black survival and development? And I guess that's maybe a curriculum perhaps that they're talking about. Somebody want to answer that question? I believe that's from Imam Manu El Bey.
The troublemaker.
All right, my man.
That's just about everybody in Black colleges.
That's right.
Right, that's right.
Somebody want to tackle that specifically?
I just want to say something very quickly as it relates to this question of policy. And one of the things I think that there's so many things we can do. We've heard this a lot, and I'm going to address you specifically, brother. The clearinghouse dimension of this work, I think, for IBW can't be understated, the importance of it. What do I mean? Very specifically, if we're talking about curriculum, probably I'm sure the majority of people in this room, I see our brothers sitting there. I'm just thinking about all the people in this room who have done curriculum over the last 20, 30, 40 years. Oh yeah, thank you, Bob. That's my man. Yes, sir. We need to talk. We don't, and I don't want to say this in the negative. What I say is that we should pick up the challenge again of having a place where all that's gathered. Because that New Jersey work, the Amistad Commission, is very important. In Philadelphia, we pulled the team together and wrote the curriculum for the mandatory African American history course that's required of all high school seniors and students in Philadelphia. That was passed by the School Reform Commission in 2007. And we wrote that curriculum. It's written, it's done. But here's the challenge, and it speaks very specifically. Between the curriculum and the student is the teacher.
That's right.
And when you hear what Akil said, what Dr. Kalfani said is very important. Assessment drives instruction.
Yeah.
That's why when you see an AP exam, and I found Mecca. So we're gonna be talking. She's in International American Studies. I'm one of this child in my class. I got 180 kids in that 8 o'clock class. I'm gonna find her before the end of the day. We need to talk. But if I'm in the room, if one of us is in the room, then you have that guarantee. Now the challenge in education, K-12, university, or any, which is why what Sister Rose, when you hear her talk, there's the compendium. I want to stay on track because I'm thinking about that bus. I want a bus like that. I want a bus like that. Now I know what you're saying. Well, get one then. Put some books in it. I know what you're saying. But I can hear that. But this is what happens. Policymakers are not the ones that get a curriculum taught. Teachers do that. The AP course, they're talking now, floating the idea of having an AP course in African American history. That's going to be important because an AP course will allow seniors, like your children, when they get ready to go to college, they score a certain number, as we know, they can then get course credit for that coming in. So, but that's driven by having a course in the AP list.
That's right.
And once you've done that, now that curriculum, I guarantee you, they're gonna have Henry Louis Gates involved. They're gonna have some Negroes to make it look black till you look too close. And then, but to their credit, and what you said about your son, I think is very powerful. Reading drives writing. So when he got opened up to reading, the rest of it is a fait accompli. It's gonna happen. But what we have to do now, we don't have to do anything, but what seems like would be a good use of our time is if we pull together the things we've already done, and IBW, part of that network Zach is building, get them in one place, even if it's a virtual place online, and then begin to take pieces out. And that really, most importantly, as far as I'm concerned, well, very important, includes assessments, includes test banks, includes, so when they say, oh, the curriculum is great, our ancestors, no, here's the multiple choice version, here's the fill in the blank, here's the multidisciplinary types of learning where children can learn by doing all the things Sister Rosa, and here are the songs, and here's the CD. And then when you have that, when you walk into your small town or you walk into your city meeting and they say, well, what you got? No. Here's the curriculum. When we say curriculum, here are the assessments, and here's the professional development that's bought into it. And then when you go in, you got a full court press because they will let you write curriculum till the cows come home. They will pay the consultants.
Yeah.
You will write a brilliant curriculum. They will receive it. They'll take a press conference. They'll put a picture in the paper and they will put it in the closet with the other 8 curriculum. Because I found at least 8 in Philadelphia from 1967 to when we wrote the one in 2007. The curriculum isn't the challenge at this point. but we do need to gather it. And I think that's very important. That's something IBW can help coordinate. Is let's get these 50 years of curricula in one place and then get to the work of building out. And then we go in and put something in the hands of someone. I can't spell curriculum, but I got this from IBW, and damn it, I want this in the room. And then you're able to do it. But that's part of this.
Shay.
Let me apologize to a few folks. We had it set up and I wasn't aware or forgot or whatever. Forgive me, the error is mine. But the Eugenia Support Group and Sister Afia, one of our board members and a local legend in these parts, I understand, she corrected me. So we're gonna do these cards, we're gonna do them as fast as we can. Most people aren't going anywhere, and then there's the Saturday sessions too. That's where the in-depth questions, and we'll take a little bit of testimony, but that's the thing.
Is that where we can continue this work in that? That's a working session. So what it said, we're gonna build that out.
Right.
Yeah, and between
Absolutely.
now
What's
and
your
then, we're gonna talk
frustration?
about it.
All right.
Excuse me, this man is so frustrated right there. Could you?
Well, but once I make an exception for one, you know what happens. Now you can't, do you have a short question you can ask? I mean, see, that's what happens. Our people are needy and we get to these points. Go ahead, brother, very quickly, please.
No one has heard of the African-centered schools in Detroit.
Of course.
Of course.
Hold on a second. Is anybody in here work with African? Thank you. There's Michael M. Hotel. In other words, everybody's in the room, brother. It's
Okay.
all right.
Okay, so is that your question?
I drove here last night to get here this morning. I'm still tired. I didn't get my vote yet, so I'm looking like whatever. But I'm listening to all these people talk about what African-centered education should have to be about, and we've done it.
We're laying the context for that. See, that's what I'm talking, brother, please, with all respect, brother, with all respect, you will not make a speech. I will cut you off.
Let the man talk.
Now, I'm running this show. All right.
Can I respond to him quickly since I asked you to identify him? Yeah, I saw your frustration. This is your problem. This is the problem. What I see. I've been to African-centered schools. Most of our children do not go to African-centered. Let me finish. Most of our children, the overwhelming majority, do not go.
Right.
The issue to me is, how do we reach those children? 1 minute. That's the issue, and to me, it's a movement issue, not a mobilization issue. I didn't get a chance to talk about this. We had to build a movement to bring about change, not mobilization. We got to create whatever it takes, not all of our people, but a sufficient number of our people to demand African-centered education, not just for private or a few public schools, but for the masses of primarily poor children caught in poor communities with no way out. So to me,
Come on. You can't monopolize the space.
So I'm just saying, some of the things you are going on, I'm hoping this is wrong.
that's Saturday. You can't answer all the questions here, but I think we have to concentrate on this. And it's hard for me to I get frustrated because I don't think we deal with how enough. I think we know the theory. We have examples of African-centered school. We have curriculums. We have books. But I don't think we spend enough time talking about how do we build movement to convince our people that they need African-centered education.
The question is, how can we purchase the books that you mentioned?
Thank you. I have about five of the song books left.
No, you got one last one. Don't forget mine.
I think we have a few more. The civil rights movement, I think it's excellent. This is about the people who died. This was special to me. Brother Baba and his wife is featured in this book, Couples of the Struggle. But you can purchase it on Amazon.com. Okay, and it's called There's a River Flowing by Faya Ture, but it costs more on Amazon.com. I want you to use it, but if you need a lot of books, like for your after school or your church, you should let me send them to you and mail them to you. If you just want one, it would help to buy one on Amazon.com. But I want to encourage you also to come to the Bridge Crossing Jubilee. It's a 3-day event that we do every year in Selma. Ron, A lot of the people you see here come every year. Asa Hilliard came when he was alive. We have African scholars come. It's not just a celebration. My dear professor has been promising me for years.
I gotta get that.
Yes, this year, we're having what we call the Southern Reparations Summit.
Wow.
The reason why this is important is because we want to use that summit as an experimental ground to bring people into a space to begin to teach them the history. They think that they're going to just get a check 5 or 10 years from now. We know they can't get that check until we mentally change their outlook. And that's why we're using the reparation movement now as a tool to build a movement, to build the consciousness in our people so they can fight for reparation and they can fight for African-centered education.
What are the dates?
I got the, would y'all give these out? These are the cards.
What dates?
March the actual reparation conference will be on March the 4th, and but we start on March 2nd. If you can't come for the whole time, at least come for March 4th.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Huh? Oh, auction the books off. They don't have time, but I do have about 4 more left. They're $25, and the CD does come with it. And these are $10. The others are $10.
But I already bought that with cash money on this.
All right, we got a question that was raised, I think, by the sister here.
Okay.
Please read it and then answer it.
The question states, the system that we are given one's doctoral degrees is not the same system that oppresses us. How can we be sure that what they have taught and thought is not the problem? Can you expand? Yeah.
Can that not be part of the problem that we are indoctrinated in this system, Eurocentric mind?
Absolutely.
And because of that, that fight to go back to what's real. Okay, and so if that fight makes it so difficult.
We got it. I think that was in the question. Thank you.
Yeah. Let
Answer.
me just take an opportunity to try to begin, then hopefully others can respond. In terms of education, even our development, we've not had a choice about one way or the other. We've had to do both and everything in between. From the slave ship to now, we've had to be creative in hostile territory and circumstances. And even our thinking orientation has functioned in that way too. And so I think that's the part of the history that's important in the education is the experience and one's grounding, one's location, wherever one is. That has to be the foundation. But rather than having to choose either or in terms of philosophies and ideas, we need to, in a remixed Du Boisian cult of dissemblance manner, find ways to connect it all together. Inside of that the creativity will come, and not to be afraid in terms of the African sense of syncretism and blending. And so I think that we go into spaces in higher education. We're educated, but we're in the academy, but we're not of the academy. And so we have to develop the struggles and the suffering that goes with that, with colleagues and others. And there have been generations before who endured that same sort of struggle. But then we have to always be mindful that we also must maintain a connection with the community at all costs. We must adopt what Vincent Harding said when he talked about the vocation of the Black scholar to the Black community. One of the first elements is to speak truth to power and to speak to our people. And so when we talk about the conceptualization of Black studies and Black institutes, we have to make it a prime goal of ours that when we get degrees, that we move from those spaces and connect to the communities intentionally at all costs, whatever the cost. And there will always be costs, but we have to go into school systems and partner and work with kids and communities and families and find ways to connect our knowledge in a practical way. And that's what IBW is trying to do in terms of connecting research to policy to advocacy. But we have to intentionally do that, and we have to be committed to do that on the long haul, the long term, and collectively across the country. And building that will take time, and also takes a willingness. Let me just say this last thing. There are extreme costs for people in the academy if they make that decision. We must have people who are committed, but we also must have support for people and somewhere for people to go and some framework all across the country for people to be able to develop efforts with. But I think we have to embrace our peculiarity, our differences, our uniqueness, and find ways to creatively to work for those. And there are a lot of examples of that here. And so I just end by saying that we have to continue beyond now. It doesn't end here. We have to get back to the work of daily, getting to the solutions and hammering those out, and even bringing back solutions previously that were not fully supported or completely given attention. So I'll begin with that.
All right, thank you very much. Here's more a statement. In order to teach and educate our children, they first must be healthy. We must include environmental justice in this movement. Lead in the drinking water, poor air quality, asthma, and other illnesses preventing our children from learning. I think everybody in the house agrees with that.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
All right, Brother Khalil.
Akil, yeah.
Akil, sorry.
So I would just start off by saying, right, that's why I started off by saying we have to have a holistic approach, including diet, environment, everything. And so that, let me just read this question and I'll kind of go from there. This one says, how do we assure that African-American or African-centered culture is conveyed in all subjects? And so I would just respond to that by saying that we have to start from the premise that we were there at the beginning. I mean, if we don't start there, then we can see things that suggest that we might not have had contributions to all of it. So that by starting at the beginning, you know, if we look at math, we say, well, okay, was math all throughout Africa, right? And that the so-called Pythagoras theorem, for instance, I call it Kemetic theorem number 22. Right, because that was what the theorem they used, the right angle, a right angle triangle, how to calculate the hypotenuse of a right angle triangle. Well, what do you think Pythagoras was studying where he was studying? Where was he studying? That's how they build the pyramids, right? And so then if we understand that, then that's how we infuse our understandings of it historically into that. We go back and we bring all that history into it. So history is not a separate subject, really. Right, history is all subjects have a history, and that we see all subjects as having a history, then that's how we understand that Africans are in the fundamental pieces of it. So that if you're talking about medicine, you can't talk about medicine and not talk about Imhotep.
That's right.
All right.
Right, so then those are the places in which we start with. We talk about politics. We can't talk about governance without looking at ancient Kemet, without talking about the Zulu, without talking about all these different folks that had their own politics. Not that we have to agree with all of them, but they all had a politic. They all had math. They all had science. And so then all those things help us to understand all the places where they're incorporated. And we just have to bring that back into our ways of doing and thinking, and not thinking that because Europeans said Pythagoras, that we have to start with Pythagoras.
I would like to ask the audience a question, because I'm telling you, this is my frustration. Most of us here know about just a bit about everything we've talked about up here. The real issue is, how do we get it to the masses? And we don't have to get it to everybody. People think that the civil rights movement, everybody was involved. No.
That's right.
You don't need but a significant number of people, but you gotta have a significant number. So to me, I would like to ask the question, how many of you are engaged in either an after-school program, a Saturday school program, a program within your church, to bring this history and this culture to your children? I just would like to see a hand. That's very good. So my second question is this: are you being effective? Okay. So the third question is, since you're doing it, I'm doing it, but still somehow it's not enough. So what steps can we take, since we of doing it? What steps can we take? And I think we can explore this Saturday. I'm not asking for an answer now, but I think Saturday we got to explore how to expand the work. I'm really frustrated because in Alabama, we gave the world 3 major civil rights movements: Selma Bloody Sunday, Montgomery, the bus boycott, the children marches being watered down and beaten down in the streets. But now in Alabama, you can't get 200 people statewide to a rally for any issue. And I don't care who comes unless it's James Brown or what's his name?
Jay-Z.
Jay-Z. So my thing is, what's up? James Brown for the old folk and Michael Jackson for the young. I'm saying at some point we got, let me tell you, y'all are laughing, but I'm serious. This time last week, there was an arrest warrant out for me in Selma, Alabama with a black mayor. An arrest warrant because I stood on a bridge with some children last year. Kari was one of them. We went on this bridge, but a few minutes. A black police chief comes and arrests us. Last week, they decided since I'm an attorney, they can't use the regular judge to hear my case, so they appoint this racist white attorney to be the judge in my case. Y'all, this is true. This just happened. This just happened. And what he did was, I filed a motion to withdraw from the case because I'm a witness. You can't be an attorney and a witness. So I filed a motion. I can't be a witness and attorney because I was arrested with my clients. So what he does, he claims he sends a notice to my law office by fax telling me to be in court Friday before last. I don't get the fax. They put a warrant out for my arrest, his arrest, and some other citizens. When I don't show up because I don't even know about it, that's when the arrest warrant. My husband's in court last week, filed a motion to withdraw this warrant. While I'm in the courthouse, he sends the police chief to arrest me. While I'm in the courthouse. Why do I tell you this story? There's no public outcry for what happened, what's happening to me, what happened to us. If a white man don't shoot a black man in the back, black folk don't get upset.
How about that?
I repeat it. If a white man does not shoot a black man in the back, we got to figure out, my brothers and sisters, how to motivate our people. Not the masses, just a significant number. I urge you to think about the reparations movement as a tool to do that. I also want to urge you to think about this. In the 60s, they concentrated their efforts in one place. Everybody came to Montgomery when it was the Montgomery movement. People came to Birmingham when it was the Birmingham movement. People came to Selma, Freedom Summer, they came to Mississippi. Since we are so few in number, maybe we need to think about a strategy that we find the ideal place for the ideal movement, whether it's reparation, and concentrate our time, send our children there for the summer as interns, have Freedom Winter, Freedom Summer. We got to think strategically. We're dealing with a monster in power. And if we are not smart and strategic, we're too spread out. I just want to think about that.
Two quick examples of what fails. Please, two quick examples of what you're talking about came to mind as you were talking. One was not too long ago, folks in this room and other folks in this vast network, we don't even know how big this network really is, had to step up and speak for Brother Hakeem Adabutu and them in their school. Because they were trying to close the school and do something with charter schools that was going to negatively affect an African-centered institution. The other was, I remember we had to intervene because the government, who was the president, they wanted to do something to your bridge crossing and come in with this overlay that would have been like their party rather than our party.
That's right.
And we all responded and sent letters where we needed to and supported your husband, Hank Sanders, Senator Sanders. And that's the kind of thing on Saturday we're going to talk about. I want us to be real specific. You know, the idea of a national movement, that can be overwhelming. But if all of us use our networks, I mean, how many cities are represented in here in states right now?
That's right.
And with this media that we got, this social media, we can reach hundreds of thousands of people in an instant. You know, something we didn't have back in the day when the Freedom Summers and all of that. I often think, how did we do stuff? We did it a lot slower. We had mimeograph machines. I used to love the way that stuff smelled, but anyway. But we did everything slow. We got on the telephone. Wasn't no email. Wasn't no Instagram. Wasn't no chat, whatever. I mean, all that's great to talk about who's getting with who. Did you see Empire last night? And I watch it. That's all right, you know. As long as you know what you're watching, you got a filter to clean it up. And you don't change your life in the wrong way. But
right.
what do we use the media? Everybody, it's not a class thing. You know, it doesn't matter your salary, if you're working or not working, everybody got a smartphone. We ought to be able in any city to text, send it out, and 1,000 people be at City Hall in an hour. And when we
That's
start
right.
doing that stuff,
That's right.
Trump and them don't know what they've awakened
That's
in our
right.
people. But it's on us
That's what
to
it's gonna
network,
take.
and that's what's happening Saturday.
Let me add one quick thing. You know, one of the things that I want us to think about though is that the objective of diffusing our energies, right, is that there's so many things going on in so many places, and so that if we come down there, then there's something else over here and something else over there. So we have to almost develop a like a GPS of things going on, so that we have a census of where things are and how to concentrate effort, right? Because if we are in our thing and our efforts, then we don't have the best way to allocate our resources. And we need to think about how do we best allocate our resources. So if we're going to say we're going to all galvanize and go one place, let's make sure that the same way that they do to determine whether or not they're going to go to take a case to the Supreme Court, let's make sure that it's the best case. Let's make sure that it's the best issue that we do, right? Rosa Parks didn't go just because it was a process of getting to that point, right? You had Claudette Colvin, who was before Rosa Parks, and Claudette Colvin, who lives right in New York, who's been over here several times. And so then that process was one that we galvanized resources. Because I was with Sister Frederica, and we had hundreds of people come to fight and try to maintain the school that we had here. But in the end, choose my words carefully, the assistance that folks had on the other side prevailed. Wasn't that nice? and that we have to look at it in that way to understand that we have to figure out maybe there was other additional resources that we needed to pull nationally to do so. I mean, we had Minister Farrakhan come here for that, and we had a rally at the school for that. We had other things that were done to address those things, but maybe we need to have our brothers over there to develop some songs about it, right? So that we can think about that there's some other approaches to doing things that begin to have a concerted effort that's not just a march and a rally, but that has multiple tentacles that surround us around a thing, and that then it becomes a concerted effort in a way that's unexpected and unpredictable, and that then then it becomes the revolution that was unexpected, that has all of its ways of galvanizing our resources, our momentum, and then that success becomes in our vein.
Strategy, and as we develop and decide things we want to do, that's the level we need to get to. My understanding of the text and the practice is 99% of the time, all the time, you choose the battleground to face your enemies. You choose the time, the place, and the issue, if you will. You never fight on their territory, particularly if they're outnumber you or they're superior. Question here. In New York City, the curriculum on elementary level does not teach phonics, grammar, penmanship, cursive writing. Former Attorney General Holder formed an office in the Department of Education to deal with education violations. Is anyone on the panel aware of this office?
It's a Title VI.
Say it again.
Yes, I'm aware of the office, the Office of Civil Rights.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it was pretty effective under Obama, not very effective, but more effective than it has been. A very righteous sister that you know, April Albright, member of the Grassroots movement. She actually is an attorney in that office. Unfortunately, after January, she won't be as effective.
Right.
But while she was there, there was a process to make sure that office was more effective. Under Trump, you can expect nothing.
Right.
And y'all, I'm telling you, we have to be the advocates. We have to be the civil rights. We have to be the attorney general for our children. And I know it's hard. I know it's just a few of us and the problems are many. But what we have to realize is that freedom is in the struggle. That as long as you're fighting, you're winning. And that it's not going to be done in a day. When they came up with the Southern strategy to get rid of all the white Democrats, they came up with that 50 years ago.
Right.
They plan 50 years ahead. So what we have to do, someone suggested yesterday, we got to have those think tanks.
Right.
We're not going to have no immediate solutions. And those examples that work, like the Afro-Centered School in Detroit, we have to know how that worked, what made it successful. One other point I want to raise real quickly. In Mali, I was trying to take a trip to Mali. I went there with Brother Asa Hilliard and some others. It was awesome. We went to Timbuktu and saw the writings of Ahmed Bamba and cried. This brother had counted Machiavelli the Prince 500 years ago. Now, it's in that book, those who got it. We got in.
Yes.
The sister, her name is Maria. She's still there. She brings people to Selma because she wants them to know what happened to the forgotten people, the lost ones.
Yeah.
We are the lost people to them. We need to know what's going on in African education in Mali. Do you know she has to fight for African education in Mali? Do you know that the students rebelled against her because they wanted to learn French and not Bamana? Do you know she is fighting right as we speak? So we have to connect to movements throughout the diaspora where people are sharing the same goals as we. I send children there. She sends children to Alabama. We got to have those exchanges and get inspired. We can do this, but it will not come easy. We may not see the fruit of our labor, but we at least have to have a vision for what we want and what we see for our children and begin to plan it one effort at a time.
And, you know, the person that ran it before that was Mary Frances Berry. And so Mary Frances Berry, one of my professors at Penn, and, you know, she's written a bunch of great books. But that's always been in battled office. She talked about how she had to sue Ronald Reagan and sue all these different folks just to get the basic things done that office is supposed to do. So I'm not surprised that it's embattled today and that it may be embattled in the future, because anything that they can do to prevent us from having being successful in the basic things that are there is that it continues. And so we've got to get to the place where we actually have to abandon civil rights and move to human rights, right? And then we are going to be on another level. We should be taking the United States government to the International Criminal Court. Right, that's what we should be addressing, the issues. If we want to galvanize each other on a central issue, if we go to the International Human Court and say that we want to bring them up on charges, then we're talking about something that's going to get people's eyes to open in a way that they haven't been opened before.
All right. We got literally 5 minutes.
Hold on, let me say, first of all,
We got two attorneys ready to go.
Mary Berry wrote a book on the commission. In fact, one of her books is on the commission. After we're finished here and tonight and in the morning between the sessions, there are other conversations that are parts of this, because there's got to be some type of balance. I love what you said, Rose, about the question of movement and how you speak to this question of movement to bring about change. There's an energy that comes with movement. Jacob Carruthers talks about intellectual warfare. We can't gloss the fact that once that energy has been ginned up, they're going to have to be people with particular skills who can take that other fight.
That's right.
That's right.
I don't want us to lose that. That's very important, because I know these sisters here will help us understand what it means when you got all that force and then you go in the courtroom and everybody just yelling. No, the United States is not a signatory to
That's right.
the
They won't show up.
exactly. They just
They
won't
won't
show
show
up
up.
if you take them to the World Court. Like, well, we're not a signatory to that convention, but that's not to say that a movement couldn't make them a signatory.
Right.
But once they're a signatory, which is the last thing I'm gonna say. Last night it's very interesting. One of the kids asked Ta-Nehisi Coates about this question of when will we expect to win? And he said, forget winning. He said, you had people born in enslavement who could look all the way back and see nothing but enslavement, and all the way forward and look at nothing but enslavement.
Right.
But they struggled not because they expected to win, but because struggle is what you're supposed to do. That's what you said, Sister Rose, right? But once we get to critical moments, we need people who can then do something with that critical mass.
Right.
We can't gloss that.
That's
Because
right.
the other thing is, this is the last thing I'll say about this. You ask students all the time, what is the thing that you love? What is the thing of your heart? And are you acquiring the skills to do that thing? And then we beat it out of them. Some of these kids love reading and writing. intellectual warfare is carried out with language. We created language. That's what Sister Rose talking about with Ahmed Baba at Timbuktu, where the Muslims will be the ones to destroy the books in the shrine of Ahmed Baba and the French. Please don't lose the fact. Please don't lose the fact that some of us have to be in a position to engage in that type of fighting. To tell people who to hit and when.
Yeah.
And then when those women ball up their fist to swing at somebody, some of us have to say, no, you can't ball up your fist, Sister Rose, because we're going to need you to plead tomorrow morning in court.
Right.
That's tactical thinking.
Exactly.
It's strategy. But I hesitated to say that. That's why I say we shouldn't be talking about it now. We'll talk about it after this is over, in between the sessions, because that's a longer conversation.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to lose what you said, Rose, about this question of passion and movement. Passion and movement energy. And so we got to figure that out, because passion and movement gets you in the room. And then once you're in the room, you're looking around like, where's Thurgood Marshall?
Yeah.
He got arrested. No, but you don't get in the room without the passion and movement. So we got to figure out a way to.
So that strategic thinking is vitally important, and I think we ended right at a good point. For instance, I have a question. How can we get the Board of Education to implement the Amistad curriculum? The complaint is that the funds aren't there to do it, fact or fiction. Well, that's a question, and we can answer it. But when we go into session, and our brother William Payne, that's where he will be there. You can talk to the chief leader, architect of the legislation. And who knows, we talked about making a strategic decision. Maybe the battle around what kinds of legislation along those lines needs to happen is right here. And we need to concentrate the national resources of the African community there.
Can I give one more suggestion? Because everybody won't be in the thing. How many of y'all went to a black college, a traditional black college? A lot of the black colleges do not have a requirement in their curriculum for African history. One practical thing we can do, I'm talking about practical. I'm almost 72 right now. I'm at the point in my life I got to be practical with the few years I have left. One thing we could do, I was at my alma, we can write and go to our schools and say, we want African-centered, we want at least a course required of everybody. I went to speak at Haverford College and I was shocked. Every freshman had to read 12 books on European history.
Come on now.
They had to read it. They didn't even get credit for it.
Say that again.
How come we can't require our schools to do that? Those are practical things that we can do. The second thing, somebody raised the issue about how do we get the elite, the intellectual elite, to buy in. What did Carter G. Woodson say? They're the hardest to stop miseducating. We have a real class problem with educated black people. Y'all know that. So what can we do? If we reach them in college, and the teacher colleges is real important. If there's a teacher college at your university, we got to lobby and advocate that teachers be taught from day one to infuse African history into the curriculum, no matter what they teach, no matter what grade it is. Those are some other practical things we can do.
All right. Let me, before we get out of here, and I would be remiss if I didn't do this. There are so many, and your observation is entirely correct. In fact, the challenge we have, one of the greatest internal challenges, is the class issue and how some people disappear and they get that Euro-centered education. And I know me and my brothers, we walked across and got that little, whatever it was. I couldn't even read it. It was in Latin. I said, this might say psych, you know.
Psych.
How about that?
But anyway, what we said to each other, to a brother, we looked at each other and said, I got mine, and they didn't get
yours
this.
to get.
And we went back to the community to do our work. And that was in the 1970s. So we want to replicate that kind of spirit in mind. So there's always soldiers in the pipeline.
That's right, brother.
You got me by a couple of years, but I'm talking about a fight I want to do like in a couple of weeks. Because if I train for a fight, take 2 years, hell, I'll be too old. So I got to fight like in the next week or two, if you get the metaphor. The people who sometimes we are too quick. And I'm so grateful to this sister because she gives back and she could do and be anything she wanted to. And that's in the mentoring field. And that's Sister Susan Taylor. Woo! She's in the back room there. Love you. And so that networking, no, we're going to go to certain communities, and this is going to be a Negro community, a certain constituency, but we get who we can get. that's going to be part of the network so that we can use their God-given gifts and resources for the collective. Frankly, I'm not interested really in sending all the black kids to school. Now, if they're Afrocentric minded, I'm not real dogmatic, but if they don't have the mindset that they're going to give back specifically, not to the minority community, you know, I ain't got nothing against Chinese, I ain't got nothing against, to the black community, like every group does for themselves first. It doesn't mean they don't do something for somebody else, but we got to get in our hands to do something for ourselves first. If you're an individual and you're black, God bless you. But if you think you have no relation to the black community, then go get some of the white folks' funds that fund them kind of people. But when we raise our money collectively, these hard-earned dollars that our mothers and fathers and grandparents and those of us in this room to this day are raising and giving to black children, then I want them, ain't got to be real specific, but you got to love our people and you got to give back. Don't forget Saturday, these many questions that we need to do work on. The answers in this room, how many people do each of us know? Powerful brothers and sisters, PhDs know PhDs in the community, in the church, in the business world. They got resources, they got skills. I know I'm always chasing young people to keep me up with the technology. We got it. It's how is it organized? So God bless you. Hope to see you Saturday at that point. In roughly 10 minutes, we're supposed to have the hip hop session in here. I hope you'll be here. Again, Aruhu Sasa, freedom now. Don't forget to buy the flag, $5, because we're gonna wave it. It's only $5 to wave this flag.
Would you give her this
Yes,
book?
please.
Professor
I
Nurdi.
will. To Maya?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will. Oh, she will be so
Yeah.
blessed by that. Thank you. Pleasure to meet you, brother.
Oh, good. I'm glad you paid me for that book because they tried to buy it. You're right.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, well. Everybody on the
Thank you.
email me.
Thank you.
Make sure everybody sees it.
Oh, yeah, one left. Thank you, boy.
Come on, they want to take your picture, man.
Oh, thank you.
Can we just sit here? Or you want that?
Okay, I didn't make the.
I'm the only one I know.
Okay. You want us to take a quick picture? Thank you.
My partner, remember anything you asked about Bruce Monte? This 8 right here, it might be yeah. Oh, that's how oh, don't worry about it. Don't even worry about the name tag. Don't even worry. Yeah, don't even worry about the name tag. I have 8 right here. I'm gonna start with 8, but some more people might be